I hope the Jaguar fans have not forgot about Zay. That's right, Zay Jones. We'll talk about that and more in today's episode of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you, everyone, again for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast on the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you that when you go to YouTube and look up Locked On Jaguars, you can subscribe for free. That's right. We're free to subscribe to on YouTube. Wherever else you get your podcast, audio-wise, make sure you tap in every single day and find us, because we'll be there and you won't want to miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. I want to shout out to my everydayers. What is going on, everyday Jacksonville Jaguar fans? Glad for you to join me, and to new listeners. Been covering the team for, I can say 14 years now. I usually round that off, but it's about 14 years in various ways. So hopefully I have the pulse of my finger on the pulse of the team. It can give you some interesting information that helps you and guides you every single day when it comes to talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want to talk about a few things today. One of which is forgot about Zay, and you guys heard me in the opening. Hopefully you did, because I think this year Zay Jones could have a tremendous impact, and it could be a lot different than the way he played last year. Of course, last year he was a part of a dynamic duo, in my opinion, with Christian Kirk. But now when you add Calvin Ridley, who we all assume that Calvin Ridley, because of what he's been throughout early in his career, is going to be the number one receiver or the alpha receiver for this team. They may not have one of those. They might switch up every single week, because when you think about it, that's exactly what happened last year. Most of the times it was Christian Kirk. Sometimes it was Evan Ingram. Other times it was Zay Jones, as guys who were making the biggest impact on the team. Well, that's who it was. You know what I'm saying? It was like every single week there was always possibly, a different player that could get that done. But usually when you start to really get and identify who your number one guy is in big moments, and the Jaguars are going to have a lot of big moments and opportunities for big moments this year. You know where the ball is going exactly. You know what Trevor's first look is going to be. It's going to be to his most talented player. We all assume that that's going to be Calvin Ridley. But we're not going to discount the contributions of someone like Christian Kirk, knowing and making sure that we understand that Christian Kirk also is going to be someone who can get it done at any given time. And then Evan Ingram, he's going to come back. He's on a franchise tag. So they're going to have weapons all over the place. They're going to throw the ball to the running backs and all of that. But make no mistake about it, I think the more talent you get, it opens up guys to have specific roles. And in this specific role that I'm talking about, I think I'm going to call him Big Play Dre or Big Play Zay. Don't forget about Zay. It's a carryover, a knockoff, if you will, from Forgot About Dre. But I just think that his role will somehow develop into one where, while he's not getting the volume of catches, when you look downfield a lot for those mismatches, the third corner, Zay Jones is going to be a hard out for any third corner in this league. He just is. I mean, the package that he has, he's better in Jacksonville than he was anywhere else, but sometimes guys just take a while to get it. Was a former first-round pick in Buffalo who had his best year with the Raiders after leaving the Bills after 2 or 3 years. And then now he, comes to Jacksonville, and people scratch their head about his contract, but he was tremendous for this team down the stretch last year in some big games. Now, we had some other games where my wife, I remember tweeting this out. My wife wanted to choke him a couple of times, because it's like, what are you doing? There was some games where He dropped some balls, and there were some games where he didn't quite look like he was ready for prime time, and then he just didn't have good weeks. But then there was other games where he just totally went ballistic, and he totally went off. I'm gonna try to pull his stats up here for you real quick. The thing is though, as you get more talented, as you get better, you would expect guys to take on different roles. So this podcast isn't a knock on him. It's not. He had 82 catches last year for 823 yards, and that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot of balls being thrown his way, right? And he had 5 touchdowns. So it's not a knock on him for me to say, look, you're going to probably see him do less this year than you have before. Because as the team elevates, that's what happens. It's kind of like in basketball. I just watched Jimmy Butler lose, and it's no knock on Jimmy Butler in the finals, but Jimmy Butler needs a better player. He needs to be the number 2 on a championship team, not a number 1 on a championship team. And so as you're trying to ascend, these are the things that have to be done. Guys have to start accepting different roles. There's nobody that's angry about them going out and getting Calvin Ridley, and they shouldn't be, right? Nobody should be. I'm looking back at his split. So his best game, he had two really good games. One against Baltimore and the other against the Chargers, where he had 11 targets and he had 10 receptions, right? He had 10 receptions against the Chargers for over 100. No, he had 85 yards. They had 11 catches, 10 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. His best game was against Baltimore, where he had 14 targets, 11 catches for 145 yards. They were coming from behind in that game, and you remember the furious rally. And then he had another really good game against Dallas, where he had 6 catches for 109 yards. So a lot of variance there. You take, he has those 2 games where he had over 100 yards receiving. He had that one game where he had 3 touchdowns, and that's against the Cowboys. A lot of variance, though, a lot of up and down. He had 8 catches for 74 yards against the Chargers in the playoffs. So he's the perfect guy to be a number 3. But a number 3 doesn't get 82 receptions this year. And I don't know how many targets he had. He had 82 catches, but he had 121 targets. That's a lot. So that number's going to drop. But what you should see with Zay are the opportunities, because he'll be going against a player that's, instead of going against the number 2 receiver, he's going against the number 3 corner. Instead of going against the number 2 corner, he's going against the number 1 corner. And then the other thing is that because of the presence of everybody else, he should have more opportunities. He's built a little different. He's long, angular, 6'2", 200 pounds, really high points the ball really well. He's going to probably benefit from the presence of Calvin Ridley more than anybody, because they're going to go to Christian Kirk regardless. You can have, I don't care who you got on the other side. Christian Kirk is going to get his share contract-wise, and from the point where he'll probably line up a lot in that slot, and he'll be the quick outlet for Trevor. But Zay Jones, in my opinion, has a chance to do more while doing less. You know what I mean? So I didn't want us to fall so in love with Calvin Ridley and know what we have in Christian Kirk. I didn't want us to forget about Zay. I'm not going to forget about Zay. All right, so here in segment 2, I'm going to go over some training camp info, when it's the release of the training camp information from what Doug Peterson said. Fans obviously will have an opportunity for the first time in a while to see training camp, to be there up close and personal. It's been a long time since that happened, man, because of the COVID season, as well as the construction of the new practice facility, because they've been pretty much practicing in the stadium the last couple of years. And then also more about the proposals and all of the rumors and things and ideas that folks have about where the Jaguars will play while the stadium's being renovated. And I'm going to really try to hammer home some solid points. Not, I don't want to beat anybody over the head, but some points about this that I think are extremely important and maybe being overlooked a little bit and possibly even blown out of proportion. So we'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars, after I let you know today's sponsor is FanDuel. Man, I hope y'all enjoyed the finals, and I hope you got in on the finals before it was over, because you need to make your way to FanDuel right now, because new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's right, $2,500. Man, I love FanDuel because it's daily, it's safe, it's fast, it's quick, you get paid instantly, and they have great promotions every single day. There's no better place to bet all the type of action than America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you're back here with me, Tony Wiggins. Well, you didn't go anywhere, but you're here with me, Locked On Jaguars, making sure that you tap in every single day, because it's your team every day, and we appreciate you making us your first listen. So, I talked about Zay Jones. Let's not forget about Zay, right? Zay Day and all of these things, and Big Play Zay. I want these names to stick, because I actually think he's going to be able to provide, while making less plays, I think he's going to make bigger plays. How about that? He's going to have some wild opportunities. You might see him with more touchdowns, even though he'll have less receptions. Training camp, July 25th, I believe. Let me make sure. I'm gonna clarify that real quick. But yeah, the Jaguars, obviously, the rookies will show up early. The veterans will show up a day after that, and then when they finally have their open practices, the thought is that, okay, so the injured players report on July 21st and the rest of the team on the 25th. I think the first practice is on the 26th, and that's the ones that the fans will likely be able to attend. The Miller Electric training facility that they've been working on now for 2 off seasons, they believe it'll be ready. I know people that have been over there, and they've seen it. I've seen it from the outside. I haven't taken a tour on the inside, but they say it is every single thing that this is truly the best of the best, right? They say it's every single thing that everyone could ever ask for. It's a brand new 125,000 square foot site, and includes brand new weight and locker room, as well as 2,100 seat grandstand for fans to attend open practices. And I think that will have some shade too. Not shade like social media shade. I mean, real shade that kind of covers you a little bit and keeps you warm. Well, you'll be able to comfortably sit and enjoy practices. I know from a media standpoint, it really helps us out. Although, I don't know, nobody worried about what we get, but still, it's always nice to be comfortable when you're there. There are a lot of storylines to watch. Among those would be the battles on the offensive line, the interior, who's going to be healthy, who's not, and all of those things. So, yeah, we'll just have to see how that all works out. But I think for the first time in a long time, it'll give fans a chance to be super, super, super comfortable heading into training camp and knowing that you'll be able to see your team. The last couple of years, they haven't been able to do that. And they've had to depend on a lot of our reporting and a lot of the things that we've had to tell them, which is cool. But you kind of want to see it yourself a little bit if you're a fan. I know there are a lot of traditions. I hope my man is cooking chili this year. Uses like a seven sausage chili or something like that. It's a tradition that the Jaguars have had. Well, the fan experience has been over the years, and I kind of miss seeing fans out there too, because you get a chance to really see people face to face that pay attention to all of the things that you say, and you get a chance to meet them. I think that a little bit of interaction from a media perspective sort of makes things go a little easier. That's just my opinion, because I think that interaction is really, really good. So, what are we looking for at training camp, other than logistically how the fans are able to come in and watch? I just want those battles to start, man. I want to see practices like I did. I remember 2018 when they came off of their playoff run. I want to see practices where iron is sharpening iron. I remember those battles between Jalen Ramsey and like Allen Robinson. Those are some of the best that you wanted to see. I remember when Telvin Smith was running around making plays, and him and Leonard Fournette were chirping back and forth. Because when a team that season didn't end up real well for the Jaguars, but when a team believes that they're good and the energy is and the expectation is higher, they just walk and look and act differently. So for us here in Jacksonville, we're probably going to see a training camp like one we've only seen in like 5 years of their entire existence. And I mean, this is going way back to the Mark Brunell, Jimmy Smith days. There haven't been very many times the Jaguars have been a team in training camp on an uptick coming off of a season or a year where they looked like they were on an uptick towards winning a championship or just normalizing being in the playoffs. So it's going to be fun. I'm glad that the fans get to come out and see it. I'm super happy and excited and stoked because I've seen Trevor Lawrence in some of the OTAs, and let me tell you, that ball comes out of his hand, man. He is better. He looks a little stronger than he was last year. The defense is running around, and you get to see it for yourself, and you don't have to just sit here and take our word for it. So looking forward to next month, and just think, y'all, we're 5-6 weeks away from these dates. Yeah, like 5.5 weeks from training camp getting going and everybody being back together, and you get a chance to witness a little bit of the process of this team. And at this particular time, it's really fun for me because they're good. And the fans really have more than just the enthusiasm of the season coming back and hope. Fans really have a tangible reason to think that this team is going to be very, very good. So I'm looking forward to it. Now, I'm going to segue into something else. I'm going to segue into when the fans are going to have to go a little bit further to see their team play. And that is in the 2025 and 26 season. That's when the Jaguars are going to supposedly renovate their stadium that they have going on. All the talks right now are, and I'll set this up in segment 3, all the talks are right now about where will the Jaguars play if they can't play at home, and it's more likely that they won't be able to play in downtown Jacksonville because they want to go ahead and do that stadium renovation in 2 years. We'll talk about that here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. All right, so a lot of the talk here is about the Jaguars and their stadium and whether or not the city council and the city of Jacksonville, as well as the ownership group of the Jacksonville Jaguars, are going to be able to come to an agreement. Right now, it's a 50-50 agreement. I'm not going to sit here and play like I'm smart enough to explain all of the nuances of that. And I'm also not going to get into the politics of, well, how much of the poverty the city is in. This is something that I think we all agree that should happen. Anybody that doesn't agree, you're entitled to your opinion. I disagree with it. We'll just leave it at that. But Shad was apparently a little chippy yesterday at someone asking him about the stadium and whether the 50-50 had any wiggle room. And shout out to the guy that did it. I can't remember your name right now, but Shad got a little chippy, which look, I understand the question. I also understand the chippiness. The chippiness is even if there is wiggle room, I ain't going to tell you, and I ain't going to sit here and negotiate that while standing in Springfield. Almost like a need to know basis. It's like, okay, if I answer yes, then whoever I'm negotiating with goes, oh, that's news to us. And if I answer no, then it means sounds like I'm being rigid. I guess there was a politically correct answer. He could have said, well, and there's always negotiations in there. I just think when you ask a question, you have to really have a reasonable expectation of what answer you're going to get. And I'm not a billionaire, but I would guess that any billionaire would tell you that you weren't going to get the answer you were looking for. And now, just like asking a lawyer what his strategy is outside the courthouse on the steps, he ain't going to tell you. So, but I guess the question had to be asked, and maybe Shad didn't have to be so chippy with it. But I really, really, really believe that whatever solution that they come up with is going to be the best one. I'm just sick of, and I'm going to be honest about my agenda. If I have one, I'm just sick of people talking about the teams leaving, because they're not. And it's not the folks that ask the question. It's other people. So, my thing is whatever we have to do to make sure we keep the team here, let's just do it. And that doesn't mean walk yourself to the electric chair and just let them do whatever they want to do. But I just think enthusiastic heads on both sides will make this happen. So we're going to assume that it's going to happen. There's a plan that it can happen in 2 years. There's a plan to make it happen in 4 years. We're just going to assume that what we're going to do is we're going to assume that we're just going to get that done. That's going to happen and it's going to get done. And the key now is where we're going to play. Where are the Jaguars going to play? Where will they play, man? Where they going to be? Lately, you heard on the podcast that I said I'd try to do the baseball stadium and then leave the baseball stadium with an extra 25,000 seats to see if they can eventually draw in a major league team or other big tournaments, at least involving baseball, because people on the First Coast love baseball so much. But the talk now is Daytona. And this is the one idea, the Daytona International Motor Speedway or whatever it's called. This is the one idea that I think most people have bought into, even the people that make apparel and hats and memorabilia. They've already sort of threw out a plan of some hats and some memorabilia. I think this is doable and viable because, one, going in and out of Daytona is very, very easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, but that infrastructure is used to handling that amount of traffic in a 2 or 3 hour period. Tailgating is definitely something that everyone's familiar with. It is right off I-95. You're not going through a whole bunch of small towns to get to it. Depending on where you live now, I live north of the airport now. So I live very close to between the airport and Yulee. So for me, shout out to Yulee, by the way. What's up, Yulee? Yulee's built up. I don't know if y'all seen it, but if you're in Jacksonville, you need to go around Yulee. It's not the same anymore. But in any event, that ride is a lot longer for me than it is someone that lives on the bottom end of St. Johns County, maybe like near World Golf Village. If you live near World Golf Village, you might be a 45-minute trek without traffic from the Daytona Motor Speedway, maybe even closer than that. Okay. Out here where I live, oh no, it's an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 35 minutes easily from here. And maybe even a little further than that. So Jacksonville's so big, it depends on where you're traveling from. Like people always say, well, how far are you from Orlando? I'm like, where are you in Jacksonville? Because that matters. Sometimes it takes you 45 minutes to get from one side of Jacksonville to another, especially if you're going from the top to the bottom. So yeah, it depends. I just think it's more viable. It's a straight shot. It's a direct shot. I could see there'd be some charters. I could see there'd be a bunch of bus trips, a bunch of tailgating, maybe even people going down the night before and enjoying the beaches and all of that stuff, or hanging out in St. Augustine and maybe trekking to St. Augustine and getting an overnight stay there and getting up and getting some bed and breakfast and then heading down. I could just see it working. It's more, to me, it's more of an extension of Jacksonville than, say, going to Gainesville. And then the logistics of having to deal with football games played one night and a quick turnaround, or trying to make sure you schedule the games when there's not a football game, I think it gets tricky. I think the infield of the Speedway will always be available, can always be sort of locked off regardless of what they're doing down there. I think the infield works perfectly. To have a football game, I think it'd be a very, very unique experience. Sure. Why not? Why not? I'm all for it. It'd be interesting to see what they're going to do with us. Like, are they going to have shuttles for the media, certain work areas? So if you don't do this for a living and you've never been like credentialed, they kind of, I'm not going to say herd us, but when you're in the media, you kind of, there's always sort of an escort that kind of takes you from one place to another. And there's certain times that you do certain things. And because guys have to get in and out of the stadium and go back to their respective venues to record and all of this stuff. So there will be concessions for us. So it is an interesting story to try to figure out, not for you, the fan, but for us, we'll all be trying to figure out what our workflow is. But a little bit of inconvenience for years and years and years of great convenience at that stadium, it would be worth it to me. So make sure you guys Keep following along here on Locked On Jaguars on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Shout out to my everydayers and any new listeners. Make sure you tap back in and you won't be new again. Tune in tomorrow as we continue to talk about some of the things going on around the league, as well as on Wednesday, James Rapine and I on Locked On NFL. Until the next time, take care of each other, and we'll see you. I'm Tony Wiggins for Locked On Jaguars.